direct action raids, and building assaults. A direct action mission is a short, sharp, violent operation to capture or eliminate a high-value target, in and out before anyone knows what happened. And no operation captures that better than Neptune Spear in 2011, the raid that killed Osama bin Laden. SEAL Team 6 flew 2 stealth Blackhawks from Afghanistan into Pakistan without telling the Pakistani government. They'd rehearsed on a full-scale replica of the compound, which door opened which way, where the stairs were, how many steps. The actual raid took roughly 40 minutes. Bin Laden was dead, hard drives were seized, and the helicopters were gone before Pakistan scrambled a response. To pull something like that off, operators train a discipline called building assault, clearing a structure room by room with terrifying precision. The core technique is slicing the pie, which is when you edge around a doorframe in tiny increments, exposing yourself to a room bit by bit until you've checked every angle before your body ever crosses the threshold. Right behind that comes the flashbang, a grenade that produces a blinding flash and a disorienting bang that shuts a person's senses down for about 5 seconds. 5 seconds sounds like nothing. For a trained operator, it's a lifetime. Teams drill these movements so many times they can execute them in complete darkness, in total silence, on pure muscle memory. No lights, no talking, just training. If direct action raids are surgical, the next chapter is brain surgery. The margin for error basically doesn't exist. Hostage rescue operations. The most legendary hostage rescue in history happened in 1976 at Entebbe Airport in Uganda. A plane carrying 248 passengers, mostly Israeli citizens, was hijacked by Palestinian and German militants and diverted to Uganda. Israeli commandos flew 2,500 miles, landed at the airport in the dark, and pulled off something almost theatrical. They drove a black Mercedes onto the tarmac to impersonate Ugandan President Idi Amin's motorcade, got close to the terminal without raising alarms, then hit every entrance simultaneously. In the firefight that followed, all 7 hijackers were killed. 3 hostages died during the raid. 1 was left behind in a Ugandan hospital and murdered days later. The assault force commander, Lieutenant Colonel Yonatan Netanyahu, older brother of future Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, was the only Israeli soldier killed. 102 hostages made it home. That is unbelievably bold. What made this operation work is the same thing that makes every hostage rescue work: the golden hour. That's the window right after a hostage situation begins, when the captors are most disorganized, most panicked, and least prepared for a counter-assault. The longer you wait, the more they settle in and start making decisions that are bad for everyone. So speed is everything, but speed without precision gets hostages killed. That's why teams use simultaneous entry, which is when multiple breach teams hit every door and window of a structure at exactly the same second, creating so much chaos so fast that captors don't have time to react to any of it. The average time between first breach and final clear in a hostage rescue is under 60 seconds, 1 minute. Everything resolved. But rescuing hostages only works if you know where they are, who's guarding them, and what they're planning to do next. Next section is all about figuring all of that out before anyone pulls a trigger. Counter-terrorism tactics. Counter-terrorism isn't just about kicking down doors. A huge part of it is what happens before any door gets kicked down. It's intelligence collection, network mapping, and what operators call find, fix, finish. Locate a target, pin them down so they can't move, then take action. Usually fast action. But the full version goes one step further. F3EA. Find, fix, finish, exploit, analyze. That last part is where it gets interesting. After every raid, teams immediately scoop up every laptop, phone, hard drive, and scrap of paper they can find. That intelligence gets analyzed overnight and feeds directly into the next raid, which produces more intelligence, which feeds the next one. During the surge in Iraq, Task Force 714, a classified Joint Special Ops unit, ran this loop so fast they were hitting multiple targets per night, every single night, for years. They called it industrial-scale counterterrorism. Wild phrase, completely accurate. But here's the thing the raids kept uncovering. Terrorist networks aren't just military organizations, they're businesses. They have payrolls, supply chains, and logistics operations. So once you've mapped the network through F3EA, the next move is starving it. Special ops teams work closely with financial intelligence units to trace money through shell companies, cryptocurrency wallets, and Hawala networks, an informal money transfer system common across the Middle East and South Asia that leaves almost no paper trail. Crack the financing and the whole structure starts to collapse, even without a single additional raid. Cracking a Hawala network, though, is like untangling Christmas lights, blindfolded in the dark. But while CT is about outsmarting the enemy, there's one role in special ops that's purely about outlasting them, and it requires a level of patience most people can't even comprehend. Sniping and Overwatch. Because the average sniper spends about 95% of a mission doing absolutely nothing, just watching, waiting, sometimes for days. A sniper's job isn't just pulling a trigger, it's intelligence collection, route surveillance, and providing what's called Overwatch, which is when a shooter sets up a position with a clear line of sight over an area where friendly forces are operating, ready to neutralize any threat instantly. Think of it as a guardian angel with a .338 Lapua rifle. The longest confirmed sniper kill in history was made by a Canadian soldier in Iraq in 2017. The distance? 3,540 meters. That's 3.5 kilometers. The shot took a few seconds just to travel through the air. At that range, the sniper had to account for wind, air temperature, air pressure, the spin of the bullet, and the actual rotation of the Earth. The rotation of the Earth? Wild. But the mental side is just as demanding as the technical side. Sniper teams operate in pairs, one shooter, one spotter. They live in a hide, which is a concealed position sometimes no bigger than a coffin, for days at a time. No movement, whispered communication, MREs eaten cold, pissing in a bottle. And through all of that, they need to stay sharp enough to make a life-or-death shot on zero notice. The hardest part isn't the shot, it's the waiting. But sometimes, waiting isn't an option. Sometimes the enemy is already moving, right into the trap you've been setting for them. Ambush tactics. An ambush is when you let the enemy come to you. Then, you make them very deeply regret that decision. The classic ambush has two parts: the kill zone, which is the area where you want the enemy to be when you open fire, and the L-shaped ambush, which is exactly what it sounds like. One element sets up along the side of a road or trail. Another element sets up perpendicular at the far end. When the enemy enters the kill zone, both elements open up simultaneously. The enemy is getting hit from two directions with no cover. It's over before it started. The Vietnam War was a masterclass in ambush tactics on both sides. The Viet Cong were so effective at this that American units would sometimes take casualties from the same stretch of trail multiple nights in a row because the VC would hit, disappear into the jungle, and come back and do it again. Brutal and effective. But special ops ambushes have evolved. Modern units use infrared tripwires, which are invisible beams that trigger alerts when crossed, combined with night vision and suppressed weapons to turn ambushes into completely silent events. The enemy never hears a thing. They're there, and then they're not. The counter-ambush drill, which is the practiced response when you get hit, is basically immediately and violently charge directly at the ambush. It sounds insane, but it's the best option because it removes you from the kill zone as fast as possible. Yeah, sometimes the correct answer to getting ambushed is to sprint toward the people shooting at you. And if land ambushes sound bad, just imagine trying to counter one while you're treading water in the pitch-black ocean. Maritime and underwater tactics. Naval special warfare is its own universe. Operators swim long distances underwater using closed-circuit rebreathers, devices that recycle exhaled air so no bubbles reach the surface. No bubbles means no detection. A combat swimmer can approach a target vessel completely invisibly from up to a mile away, and once they're there, plant limpet mines, magnetic explosive devices that attach to a ship's hull and detonate hours later, long after the team is gone. This tactic is older than you'd think. In World War II, British frogmen called the Cockleshell Heroes paddled canoes 60 miles upriver into occupied France and attached mines to German shipping vessels. In canoes, paddling by hand. The audacity. But getting onto a vessel undetected is only half the capability. Sometimes the mission isn't to sink the ship, it's to take it. Units like the US Navy SEALs and the UK's Special Boat Service specialize in maritime takedowns. approaching in rigid inflatable boats, throwing grappling hooks, scaling the side of a moving vessel, and clearing it room by room. Except now, the rooms are moving, and wet, and pitch black. The pinnacle of this was the rescue of the Maersk Alabama captain in 2009, where 3 Navy SEAL snipers simultaneously shot 3 pirates holding him hostage, at night, on a pitching lifeboat, from a moving warship. 3 shots, 3 kills, 0 misses. Insane. Getting to the target is one thing, but getting a team into a place they were never supposed to be, and then getting them out alive after everything goes sideways, that's a whole separate problem. Insertion and extraction tactics. Getting into a place you're not supposed to be requires choosing your poison. From the air, there's the halo jump, high altitude, low opening, where operators exit at 30,000 feet, the same height as a commercial airliner, free fall most of the way down, and only pull the chute a few hundred feet from the ground. Low enough that radar almost never picks them up. Low enough that if anything goes wrong, the math gets very bad. The alternative is HAHO, high altitude, high opening, where you pull immediately after jumping and glide silently for up to 40 miles, navigating like a human hang glider in pitch black with night vision and 80 pounds of kit, trying to land on a specific patch of ground with no noise and no signal, just you and the stars. Both methods have the same goal: put a team on the ground before anyone knows they're coming. From the water, the options are just as creative. Teams can be delivered by submarine through a lockout. The sub hovers just below the surface. Operators exit through a flooded airlock and swim to shore. Or they ride SEAL delivery vehicles, which are basically miniature underwater scooters to get closer to the target without exhausting the swimmers before the mission even starts. But all of that planning and precision goes into getting there. Getting out is a different story, because now someone knows you exist. Combat Search and Rescue, or CSAR, is when special ops teams go back into a hot zone to recover downed pilots or isolated personnel under active fire. You're moving toward danger, picking up someone who can't fight at full capacity and getting out while people are actively trying to stop you. It's considered one of the most dangerous missions in the playbook. Every CSAR operator will tell you the same thing. You train for it more than anything else, because you hope you never need it. But even the best insertion means nothing if the team falls apart the second they make contact. Everything, every jump, every swim, every rope descent, comes down to one thing that's been the backbone of infantry combat for a century: fire and maneuver tactics. This is the fundamental building block of everything, and it's deceptively simple. Fire and maneuver, also called bounding overwatch, is when one element of a team provides suppressive fire, basically shooting enough rounds at the enemy that they have to keep their heads down, while another element moves forward. Then they switch. The movers become the shooters become the movers, over and over until you've either closed with the enemy or flanked them entirely. The phrase used in training is shoot, move, communicate. Take those 3 things away, and a special ops team is just a group of confused guys with expensive gear. Put them together, and even a small unit can defeat a much larger one. During the Battle of Roberts Ridge in Afghanistan in 2002, a small team of SEALs and Rangers found themselves pinned down on a mountaintop at 10,000 feet of altitude in freezing temperatures, massively outnumbered. Through fire and maneuver, moving, suppressing, moving again, they survived for hours in the most adverse conditions imaginable. 7 Americans died that day, but without disciplined fire and maneuver, none of them would have made it off that mountain. It's the oldest tactic in the book, and it still works. But sometimes, the mission isn't to fight the enemy at all. It's to make sure they never get to fight back in the first place. Sabotage and demolitions. Let's talk about blowing things up, professionally. Sabotage missions go all the way back to ancient warfare, but special ops took it to an art form in World War II. The OSS, the predecessor to the CIA, and the British SOE dropped teams of agents behind enemy lines throughout occupied Europe, specifically to destroy bridges, rail lines, factories, and fuel depots. One French resistance operation blew up a rail tunnel so critical to the German supply chain that it set back an entire division's movement by weeks. Modern demolitions experts, called demo guys in special ops circles, can bring down a bridge with a fraction of the explosives a regular engineer would use. The technique is called critical node targeting, which is figuring out the exact point in a structure where a small explosion causes catastrophic cascading failure, like removing one Jenga block and watching the whole tower go. And the way they set it off is just as precise, using time pencil fuses, which are chemical delay detonators that start a slow reaction the moment you activate them and detonate hours later with zero electronic signal to intercept. No timer counting down, no red wire to cut. Sorry, action movies, the team is long gone before anything happens, and the enemy has no idea who did it or when it was set. But here's the thing about sabotage. The best version isn't always physical destruction, because the most effective weapon sometimes is the one that never existed at all. And that means working not just with explosives, but with people. Unconventional warfare. Unconventional warfare, or UW, is when special forces work with and through local populations to fight a larger enemy. Instead of American boots kicking down doors, you're training, advising, equipping, and leading local fighters who know the terrain, the culture, and the people better than any outsider ever could. The classic example is the OSS's Jedburgh teams in World War II. Three-man cells dropped into occupied France to organize the French resistance. These guys parachuted behind enemy lines with basically nothing, linked up with local partisans, and helped coordinate a guerrilla campaign that tied down tens of thousands of German troops who could have been fighting the Allied invasion. 3 guys, tens of thousands tied down. That is a return on investment the Pentagon would love. In more recent history, when the US entered Afghanistan in 2001, small teams of Special Forces soldiers did something almost unbelievable. They linked up with Northern Alliance warlords, rode horses across mountain passes, and directed airstrikes from horseback. There's literally a statue of this at the 9/11 Memorial in New York. Horse soldiers, in 2001, calling in B-52 strikes on cell phones. The core of unconventional warfare is earning trust, and that is harder than any door breach or parachute jump. Because you can train for a breach. You can't train for convincing a village elder in rural Kandahar that you're on his side. That takes months of relationship building, language skills, and cultural awareness. It's the most patient form of warfare there is, unless you're doing it at -40 degrees in the dark with frostbite. Extreme environment warfare. Some special ops units don't just operate in bad conditions, they specifically seek out the worst conditions on Earth because they know the enemy won't expect them there. Norwegian Jægertroppen trains in the Arctic because Norway shares a long border with Russia and knows that any conflict there will happen in temperatures so cold that most militaries can't function. Operating at -40 Fahrenheit requires completely different everything. Different weapons lubricants that won't freeze solid, different food that won't turn into a brick, different medical protocols for frostbite, hypothermia, and trench foot. You have to know how to build a Quincy, which is a snow shelter hollowed out from a packed snow mound that can keep you alive at lethal temperatures. Then have a firefight. On the other end of the spectrum, desert warfare presents its own nightmare. In the Gulf Wars behind-the-scenes SAS patrols, teams of soldiers operating in Iraqi territory hunting Scud missile launchers, soldiers dealt with dehydration, 130-degree heat during the day, and near-freezing temperatures at night. One infamous patrol called Bravo 20 tried to infiltrate on foot and ended up fighting one of the longest escape and evade actions of the modern era. 3 died, 4 were captured. 1 escaped on foot into Syria, nearly 200 miles on foot through hostile desert. Unreal. But extreme conditions are only survivable if you actually know what's out there waiting for you. And finding that out without ever being seen is arguably the most underrated skill in the entire Special Ops playbook. Stealth, surveillance, and special reconnaissance. Special reconnaissance, or SR, is when a small team infiltrates denied territory and just watches. They observe enemy movements, count vehicles, photograph installations, and report back. And the information they gather shapes every other operation on this list. During the Falklands War in 1982, British SAS and SBS teams were inserted onto the islands weeks before the main amphibious assault. They hid in OPs, observation posts, which are concealed positions, sometimes just a hole in the ground covered with a camouflage net. and spent days watching Argentine troop positions, logging every patrol schedule, every sentry change, every vehicle movement. That intelligence was poured into the landing plan, lives saved because a few guys sat in holes for 2 weeks. Modern SR involves a dizzying range of technology. Unattended ground sensors, which are disguised devices that can detect vibration, sound, or heat signatures and transmit data wirelessly. Miniature UAVs no bigger than a hummingbird. Fiber optic cameras threaded under doors. Signals intelligence equipment that can identify a specific person from their phone's metadata without ever intercepting the actual call. But the most sophisticated SR tool is still a trained human brain behind a pair of binoculars. Technology fails, batteries die, signals get jammed. A trained observer who knows what they're looking at and why it matters, that's irreplaceable. But here's the question nobody asks. What if you could win without any of that? Psychological and influence operations. Psychological operations, or PSYOP, now officially rebranded as Military Information Support Operations, which is way less cool a name, is about changing what the enemy believes, feels, and does without firing a single shot. In World War II, the Allies ran Operation Fortitude, which was a massive deception campaign designed to make the Germans believe the D-Day invasion would land at Pas-de-Calais instead of Normandy. They created an entire fake army group, complete with inflatable tanks, fake radio traffic, and double agents feeding misinformation, commanded on paper by General Patton because the Germans believed he was the best Allied general and assumed he'd lead the most important invasion. The Germans kept significant forces at Pas-de-Calais for weeks after D-Day had already happened, waiting for the real invasion. The real invasion was the one already going, one of the greatest cons in military history. Modern PSYOP runs from leaflet drops, the US scattered 29 million pamphlets over Iraqi positions during the Gulf War, and surrender rates among targeted units were measurably higher, all the way up to full-spectrum information warfare. Social media, radio broadcasts, targeted messaging, and what's called strategic communications, which is the long game of shaping narratives over months or years to undermine an enemy's support base, sow distrust between leaders, or encourage defections. Some of the most effective operations never made the news. That's kind of the point. The wildest part? You don't need to destroy the enemy's capability if you can destroy their will. An army that doesn't believe in what it's fighting for will melt away no matter how well equipped it is. So that's every special optics tactic explained. But before you go, check out the next video on screen now.